Hi, I'm Matt Barry. I'm an independent filmmaker, and this is Low Budget Visions, where we celebrate personal DIY, independent filmmaking. And I'm happy to have back tonight Sujewa Ekanayake. You're going to be joining us to talk a little bit about the screening last night. It was the April 20th screening in Brooklyn at the Film Noir Cinema. And I'm looking forward to hearing about how this went and what you learned from the experience. So, welcome, Sujewa.
Awesome. Nice to be back. Sorry about the messy background and the not so great technology for the image. I was trying to get my iPhone 14 working as a continuity camera, but I wasn't able to figure it out in time. So next time. All right. So yeah, the show went really well. Some filmmakers, podcasters showed up. I've been posting up videos and photos on Twitter at Sujewa Fantastic on Twitter, and on my YouTube. You could just Google it. First, you could search on YouTube first NYC filmmakers hangout day, and type in my name Sujewa Sujewa, and you should see videos from the day. Tomorrow, I hope to release a 20-minute documentary made up of video footage and still footage from the day. It
Nice.
went really well.
Glad to hear it. I was really glad to see that it happened. It looks like you had a nice turnout. And am I correct that the Manbaby screening sold out? Is that right?
Yes, sold out initially with comps, free giveaways,
Mhm.
and about half the people showed up. So the theater was at about half capacity, maybe a little bit more, but it was a small theater. The max capacity is about 50,
Mhm.
so it felt much more packed, and it was a great event. We had a good number of people there.
Nice. Well, congrats on pulling it off, setting it up and pulling it off. It sounds like it went really well, and I think it's great that you're getting these films out there. Now, you sent me some really interesting notes on the screening, and I thought tonight we could kind of go through these point by point. I can sort of lead the discussion here, and you can jump in, and I'd love to hear you kind of expand on some of these thoughts that you sent me.
Mhm.
Actually, before we get into that, could you just real quick give us an overview on the film that you programmed there, Man Baby?
Sure. Man Baby is a film by a Seattle-based filmmaker who went to film school here in New York at NYU. Tim Lytell is the director, and it's about a man, a comedian who pretends to be a baby and then somehow becomes a real baby of sorts. And then there's and the story finishes in the future. It's on Tubi for anyone who wants to check it out. Fun, weird movie.
Great. Sounds like fun. So yeah, I'll put a link to that in the description of this video to check it out on Tubi.
Awesome.
Okay, so I've got your notes here. I'm going to just start to go through this. So you mentioned that you met up with you got to meet up with the director and the Broke Boys film team. Is that right?
Yeah, there's another New York City film called Broke Boy. We
Mhm.
have a poster back there. There's my finger. Well, there you go. There you go. That's the Broke Boy poster on my wall. Yeah, it's that's a film about a local weed salesperson who is doing things somewhat illegally, and he runs into trouble with his supplier, and he's got to come up with some money by a deadline. So that movie's about that comedy drama that takes place in New York. Really great New York City cinematography, and the co-director of that movie, I forget her name, and David, the director, I forget his full name, are were at the event, and on my Twitter there are links to their sites. Their names will be there, and also on the videos. I just
Great.
met them recently, so names are not in the memory yet. So those two came. Myself, New York City filmmaker. I have Cosmic Disco Detective Renee out now, and I'm making two new ones now. And then Ro Martin, I believe Martin was his last name.
Mhm.
He's a podcaster. He came. He's a fan of Man Baby movie. And then Man Baby director Tim Lytell came. So
Great.
we all met up at a Three Decker Diner in Greenpoint, and that was how things started around, I think around 2, 3 p.m.
All right. And it says that you're, excuse me, that there was a live podcast going on. Is that right?
No, I did some live videos for my YouTube.
Oh, live. Okay. Yeah. Great. Now, you mentioned that you then went to the theater and you spoke with the theater owner. Was that just to kind of touch base before the screening and make sure everything was set up and running smoothly?
Yeah, I had some time to kill because Tim wanted to rest up and get ready for the event.
Okay.
So Tim and Ro went off to rest. I got lunch and went up to Film Noir Cinema, talked to Will, who's the owner, and yeah, just about upcoming things and the events that are happening that day. So, exciting day in Greenpoint. One thing I was doing was testing out my iPhone 14, which I just got recently, and I had not taken the charger, but luckily I didn't need to charge the phone at all during that day. So,
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I want to ask you more about your
sure.
experiences shooting with the iPhone 14 a little later. Now, on that note, it says that you took around 100 plus photos that day of the event. Is that right?
106, maybe 107.
Nice.
A
So,
bunch of video. And some of those photos were live photos. So as I'm editing, I've discovered that all the live ones have a few seconds of video. So I'm going to end up using the stills and the video to make the documentary more interesting.
all right. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit here. We'll talk about
Sure.
the iPhone in a minute. But so around 6 p.m., you went to the theater and you saw there was a line forming.
Hmm.
Uh, was it starting to?
Photos on the web.
What's that?
We have photos of the line forming on the web.
Oh, okay. And so you knew that a lot of these people were coming because of the pre-sales, right? Through event.
Tim knew. Yeah, Tim did some promos using, I think, Instagram. So he
Okay.
had a list of who was coming.
All right. And then you went into the theater about 5 minutes before the 7 p.m. start time. You say it was,
Very tight. They had another show, another event going on prior to us, so there was a very tight changeover time.
okay. Once you were in the theater, you say it was at half capacity and maybe even more than that.
A little bit more. It felt like it was a little bit more than half.
You said some of the people who had received the free, I guess, comp tickets hadn't shown up.
Yeah, that happens quite often. Sometimes all of them show up or 80% show up, sometimes 25, 50%.
But those who were there, you say, looks like the people had a good time at the show.
Yeah, yeah. We got some videos of the Q&A. They were asking good questions, weird questions, having fun. They were laughing throughout the movie. So yeah, they had a great time.
Cool. And I think you were able to take advantage of the post-screening Q&A by doing a live stream
Yeah, I did a live stream. There's about 5+ minutes of it. First couple of minutes, I was just getting my gear up and running, and there was a bunch of things happening with getting the lights on, getting people to the front, all that. But after that, we settled into a nice rhythm, and I got about 75% of the Q&A.
Great. It sounds like everything went well. You say people hung out after the show, talked, you met some new people, Manbaby movie fans, and another podcaster as well.
Another Ezekiel, I think, is his first name. I don't know the last name yet. All these are all new people to me, so don't know the names yet. But it's documented on my Twitter. Ezekiel has a podcast called "Let's Go Now" or something. Let's something something.
Hmm.
Anyway, some kind of a New York City based podcast. Uh, yeah, so he has been a big fan of Manbaby for a long time. So I have photos with him also.
All right, then you went out to dinner with Tim and Ro afterward and got home around 11 p.m. or so. Very long day, but you met some
Those guys
interesting.
were really tired.
Oh
Ro had
yeah.
been up for like 4 days, 3, 4 days by then.
Oh, okay. Did you say you met some interesting people, including a comedian, and that it was a great event?
Yeah, and there's a local comedian whose name also escapes me. I need to start writing down all these names to have for the next day podcast or the day after podcast. Sean something maybe. Anyway, local comedian, he was there, so I met a lot of good connections. All these people followed up with me on Twitter and elsewhere afterwards, and some on YouTube. So some the thing that I expect from screenings, which is to meet people, hang out, and increase my network, that happened. So this was a good event for that.
It sounds like you can count it as a success then. I see here you talked with the theater owner while the movie was playing. You planned out some potential future projects, and I guess you'll have some more info on that soon. If you want to, I don't know if there's anything you can share now, or if you would rather wait, that's fine.
Well, the things that are coming up are Cosmic Disco Detective Rennie, any of the two movies that I'm working on now, depending on when they get done. All of my movies, I think I'm going to do at least one screening, maybe a 1 week run, maybe one night only, or bring it back for several nights. Some screenings at Film Noir Cinema or at another local theater. So those three movies, one or three, all three of those movies soon. Memoria possibly, which is the Apichat Pong versus Cool movie with Tilda Swinton. I would like to do a screening of that, and as a part of Indie Discovery LA in New York. Then Chetsumoka's Curse by Rick Schmidt, that's ready to be screened.
Oh, great movie.
Hopefully,
I just
what was
watched
that?
that the other night. I saw that just recently. That's a great one. I like that a
Awesome,
lot.
awesome. What'd you like about it?
Oh, I mean, the whole Dogma 95 style, the improvised, the conversations. Yeah, I mean, I just totally dig that type of filmmaking. I mean, it's part of what I enjoy about your work too. There's a kind of a very different in some ways, but there's a kind of a sensibility. I feel like it's all on the same wavelength for me. I really take like that kind of thing.
Awesome,
I'm
awesome.
glad to hear
Yeah,
you might be screening that.
yeah, yeah. Maybe you'll have to come up to Brooklyn for that.
Oh man, I'd love to. I would love to.
So Chetsumoka's Curse is one, and there's a new movie from Chicago called Thank You Five. It's about a group of people putting together a play, and they did a new black and white version of the movie, which looks really good. I'd like to show that. So hopefully July 13th or so for that. Maybe Manbaby will come back. We'll see. Maybe, but he's been showing it for a couple of years now, so he
Okay.
might be ready to move on to something else. Uh, and what else? I think that's about it. Yeah, I think that's about it. Memoria, Chetsumoka's, Renee, 53 spaceships, perhaps, NYC UFO sex cult, perhaps, and Thank You Five. Yeah, I think that's about it. So there's a handful of movies that are being planned for upcoming Brooklyn screenings. Should be
It's,
amazing.
it's great to hear that it's all coming together. It seems like this series, it seems like it's gaining momentum, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
showed one, two movies at LA theaters in 2023, one
Mhm.
week runs. Plus, I launched a Renee movie online during the same time under Indie Discovery LA. Then in Chicago, we showed three movies, including Renee movie and Bristol Fashion, which is a New York City movie, and then the documentary Only in Theaters. So now we've done our first NYC Indie Discovery LA screening, and that was a great event. Got a lot of photos, met a lot of people. People came out. Everyone had a good time.
There's such
So
great.
three cities around the country now, across
Yeah, no, it's great to hear it. I mean,
Indie
getting
Discovery LA is taking over. Watch out.
yeah, get these movies out there, get them up on the big screen, bring people together for them. It sounds good to me. Are you doing you mentioned you have all these photos and it sounds like you're really taking full advantage of creating promotional materials out of the screenings, like the documentary video and the interviews. I mean, that's great. Get the buzz going for this. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the reason to do screenings, they're expensive to do, take time consuming. The reason to do is to meet people and promote the movie, but
Mhm.
also to document it really well so that photos, interviews, articles, whatever that comes out of each screening can be used in the future to promote the movie on VOD, physical, other screenings. You can take documented element photo or a video from a screening that happened a few months ago and retweet it or share it again, but add link to the movie somewhere saying, hey, we showed this in April, but now it's on this platform. Check it out here. So it's a better way to promote the movie.
Yeah.
Where more interesting.
Yeah, and it's more interactive too. I mean, you really get everybody feels like they're a part of it, I think. And it
Hmm.
creates a real life, real world event that can generate some buzz. So congrats
Yeah,
on
it's very exciting bringing these movies from the internet out to the real world.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about that today on a kind of unrelated note, but I was thinking about how I guess how easy it is just for to kind of get sucked into this idea of just putting the movies online, letting the, and just having them exist in that space. And that is a great way to have them out for as many people as possible. But
Hmm.
yeah, when you get an event going like this, there's something really, I think, kind of magical about it. There's real energy to it. It's
Yeah,
like a
definitely.
real, it's a movie experience. Yeah.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
I've looked at my stats on YouTube on the back end.
Hmm.
A lot of people in New York and in America have not seen a Renee movie yet, even though it's at 100 and almost 130,000 views. So, so that goes to show that you can get a lot of views from across the country and around the world,
Yeah.
but still have plenty of space, plenty of room, and plenty of people who've never heard of the movie to promote to and show in the real world.
Right. You sent me some notes here about some positive things that came out of this experience with the screening, and also some potential problems that I thought would be interesting to share because of what
Sure,
we can learn from it.
problems in general with doing screenings. This event
Yeah,
went really well.
yeah, yeah. I mean, we'll start with you say on the positive side here. If you're just working with a theater, maybe an event producer in the mix, it can go pretty well. And you have to be ready for any kind of unexpected problems that come up, things that need quick
Sure.
solutions. But most of the time things go pretty well. You say out of 100 screenings that you've done, you've only had serious problems with a handful of them.
Yeah, and I can talk about in brief some of the
Yeah,
serious problems. One event, and we won't talk about the films or the filmmakers, but in
sure. Yeah.
general, this could, producers of these screening events could run into this problem. One event, I booked it and I explained to the filmmakers what we're doing, which is the movie is selected to the series. So from that point on, the series determines how it gets promoted, what happens, blah, blah, blah. And we co-produced it. They took care of some of the expenses. I took care of some of the expenses
Mhm.
uh, to benefit the streaming series and also the film and the filmmakers. So, but they had all these other things they wanted to do, other special events, expand move the event to a different theater, bring in special guests. So, and they basically ended up booking competing events at the same theater, after we've set up my event, the Indie Discovery LA event with their movie. So I was like, listen, this is not going to work out. So why don't you guys go do your own thing? We'll remove you out of Indie Discovery LA, and then you'll be free to fully do your thing. And we figured out a refund schedule and a bunch of other stuff based on because the original agreement that we signed, was no longer being followed.
Mhm.
So yeah, so if filmmakers start doing a bunch of other things on the side that compete with the event or that get in the way of what the event is trying to do, then that could be a problem. So once you sign up to do an event, figure out what the organizers are doing and work with them and not just not try to do your own thing on the side.
Mhm.
Also communicate whatever you want to do, talk to them and see if it can be done. Some things can't be done, right? So
Yeah.
once you book it and you tell the theater what's happening, they get the ball rolling to do things a certain way. So you can't move it, you can't make 15 changes after that.
I'd like to talk a little bit about this idea of communication specifically, because I think this is something that in every facet of film, production, exhibition, it's so crucial. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it is something where a lot of I would say that in my experience, it's probably the number one obstacle that can come up. And I've seen this, time and again, where there's a lot of problems that I think could be solved by simple communication. I wondered if you could, and you don't have to get any specifics exactly, but I just wondered if you could elaborate a little bit on that idea of communication and where you run into problems with it, and also cases where communication prevented a potential problem.
Yeah, I mean, showing only in theaters with Raphael Sbarge and also showing Bristol Fashion with that director, that went really well because well, me and Raphael talked a lot on email, video, text, and also the director of Bristol Fashion, Pierre Gillette, I think that's his name. He kept in touch when possible. His day job, doesn't make it possible for him to contact too much during the day, during the week. But yeah, we went back and forth, and then we met up. Me and Pierre met up prior to the event, and we talked. And I was in touch with Raphael throughout the event, and same thing with Tim. We talked quite a bit, about this screening. But for this event, there were some last minute changes. Ro was going to come to New York. He's from Kansas City. Then he wasn't going to come. Then he decided to come again, and that was like 2 days prior. So I think Ro and Tim wanted to do more, sort of a live stream podcast from the theater.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they knew that there was another show at 9. So we were booked from 7 to 9. So we would have to get out right after
Right.
the Q&A. So there was some lack of communication about that, which I only found out later because Ro was talking about it on his podcast, and Tim may have just dropped that idea and decided to just roll with it. And so a little bit of miscommunication there. But one thing to remember about these events is you're sort of at the mercy of the theater once it gets close to the day of the event or at the day of the event. So things come up with the theater, they'll say, well, this other show is going over, so we'll let you in right before you begin, and you'll have to leave right after the show's over because we booked another show at 9, blah blah blah. So
Yeah.
so that's going to happen. Some things may not be possible to do as planned, but as long as you get to show your movie and the audience gets to watch it and meet you as a filmmaker, I think it's a success.
Yeah. No, that I agree with you there for sure. You get to have the
So
experience.
100, it cannot be controlled 100%, and
Oh
no matter
yeah, yeah.
who's doing it. Even no one doing these events has 100% control at whatever budget or at whatever facilities, and regardless of how experienced the people are.
Yeah, no, like you said, just being able to kind of roll with the punches and adapt and be flexible about it. Yeah, that's key. And yeah, but good communication definitely makes that a lot easier. So I'm glad to hear.
So yeah, one thing I want to say to actors and filmmakers:
Hmm.
if you want to make work, stay in touch with other filmmakers and actors regularly, right? Like, once a week, once a month, whatever. Check in and chat, and just do a social thing, because indie filmmaking is, and maybe all filmmaking, but certainly indie filmmaking, is more of a social arts thing, right?
Hmm.
So you might not be thinking about doing something, but you talk to someone and you find out they're available and interested in doing something, then you might get an idea to do something, then you make it happen. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a purely business thing. Waiting around for things to start is fine. It's not like, you schedule a shoot start at 12 and it starts at 12. No, it might be 2 or 3. You might be getting paid to wait, because the director's not ready, some other element, the location's not ready. So uh, things have to happen as planned, unless people notify you. But two things: stay in touch with people all the time, and check in regularly about things in general and possibilities. And during the day of the event, be flexible, because like bring a book or use your smartphone. Things are not going to go tightly as planned. And even when filming, more time you have, as we discovered from making our recent movies, more time you have, the better. So less of being a slave to the schedule, the better.
Yeah, it's funny. You made a really good point that I want to get back to here. You said something about indie filmmaking at this level being kind of like almost like
At any level, at
at
any
any
level,
level being kind of like
$100 million, it doesn't matter.
you say it's kind of like a group art project in a way.
Yeah, social art.
social art
I
project.
think
Yeah.
all filmmaking is like that, even though at the Hollywood level is packaged and talked about differently.
Hmm. I mean, I think that that idea of bringing people together, kind of finding people where you're on the same wavelength, you kind of vibe with each other's, sensibilities and approaches to making a movie. I think that is a really big part of finding good people to work with because I mean everyone has their different approaches, and especially as the budgets go up and the scale of the production goes up, I think a lot of times it can become a lot, and it has to for some reasons, become more regimented and a little bit more
Mhm.
rigid about things. But I think when for me at least, working at a certain level, you have a real flexibility and yeah, like you said, you can meet people who want to be a part of it, and then that spurs on new ideas and so when you can meet people like that and stay in touch and I think support each other, that is really key. That is a really important part of this whole process.
Yeah, I think at any budget level, I'm not going to go to a rigid schedule because that affects the quality of the work.
Hmm.
I think things have to be kept small and flexible at regardless of the budget. Even if I'm making a $500 million movie,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna try to do things the way I do now with the micro budget projects that I'm doing now.
Yeah.
The more regimented it becomes, less creativity, less spontaneity, and less room for making improvements to the work.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that spontaneity that you're describing is necessary just to just to get things made, because if you adhere to really rigid demands and schedules and things, it may just not happen. It just may not even happen at that point, or at least it might get a lot more complicated. So
Right. Or
yeah.
you might be rushing things through to meet a deadline,
Hmm.
then the work is not as good as it could be. So it's so the entire thing becomes kind of pointless.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you have to keep a certain spirit of fun about the project too. I mean, it is work, and there's work to get done, but I think it has to be, it has to be enjoyable at some level, because otherwise, yeah, it's kind of like why do it, really? I
Oh
think.
yeah, I think my number one rule is it has to be enjoyable
Mhm.
majority of the time now for me to do it. And
Yeah.
people I work with, I need to get along really well with. They have to communicate really well, unless they're like a super necessary talent, even who could do the job well and not very social, but they can do the work. That's fine. And if no one better is around who meet all the necessary criteria,
Mhm.
so you have to make some exceptions sometimes.
Yeah.
But generally, you want to work with good people who are social and who communicate well.
Yeah, that's for sure. Getting going back to your screening notes here for a minute, I just wanted to see if there's anything else that we'd like to touch on here before we move on. You mentioned like some of these problems that you might encounter, and these weren't specifically problems you encountered with the Manbaby screening. These are
Right.
just general things that might come up. Just to clarify this for people listening. But you said, yeah, we talked about the lack of communication, the lack of following directions. Oh, that's something I wanted to ask you too. With the film delivery, getting the copy of the film to you. Do you mind sharing how you handled that? With
Yeah, once I set up a screening with a filmmaker and the theater, I tell the filmmakers, uh, you know, contact me about anything related to the screenings. Don't contact the theaters directly because
Mhm.
the theaters they're showing like 100 movies, whatever. So things may fall down the crack and not get done properly.
Mhm.
And this way it simplifies the project for everyone, and
Yeah.
everything is well documented through my emails and notes. So I figure out what the theater wants, and I contact the filmmaker, and the filmmaker sends the file that the theater wants. Then I either send it directly to the theater, or if it's an upload process, then the filmmaker can do it directly with the theater using whatever site credentials that the theater provides.
Well, that's good. That's convenient. Yeah. Um, so yeah, you mentioned
So keep
here, I
things as
guess.
simple as possible and have a contact chain and procedure in place so that three people are not making the same plans in three different ways.
Right. You have some general guidelines here that I think are good to keep in mind. You say go with whatever the organizer says for the event. It's tough to get screenings under whatever conditions. Don't make the thing even harder by not following directions.
Hmm.
You add that there's going to be unexpected challenges. The venue could have problems. Some audience members could be problematic. There could be delays with everything. But you roll with the punches and be adaptable. And you say here to kind of close out these guidelines. You say it's easier just to show your own movie. Uh,
Yeah, it's a level of complexity gets removed if it's just you and the theater and your movie, and you
mhm.
can be much more flexible then. If things are tough, you can just completely reschedule, and uh, and you can do that anyway. But it's just easier if it's just you showing your own movie. So if you're having a hard time showing other people's movies, you just work on showing your own movies, and then ever so often, people that you really connect well with, and you can do business really easily and well with, show their movies down the road.
Yeah. You say it's a lot more difficult to work with several filmmakers to do a group event, but a group event is more interesting. There's
Right,
greater promotional potential.
right. You
Yeah.
can promote more. And another way that we just discovered this past weekend is even if you're showing one movie by one filmmaker, you can make a whole day out of it by creating a filmmakers hangout day, some kind
Mhm.
of a filmmakers meetup day, have meetings, do live streams, take photos, meet up with people, and have them, people who have the time and the interest, have them go to the screening later in the
Yeah.
day. You can make it could just be one film and a couple of filmmakers, and then bring in 10 or more of the filmmakers from the area to talk about their movies in conjunction with the event happening that day. Turn it into a filmmakers day.
Yeah. That sounds good. I wanted to talk a little bit now about your experiences shooting on the iPhone,
Sure.
which I believe this was your first. I guess this was kind of like your first real, outing with the iPhone 14,
Yeah,
kind of
14
first
plus.
heavy duty, yeah, 14 plus,
Yeah,
yeah, kind of your first like
first
serious
test.
outing with using the phone as a camera.
Yeah, I've had it for
Uh,
about a week now, a little over a week. I think
okay,
I got it 2 Saturdays ago, and
yeah, yeah,
yeah, this was the first real event, and I left the charger at home,
hmm
so I had maybe 80%, 90% charge by the time I left. And we did 106 some photos. I used it for maps, walking with the camera, with the phone and following the maps, maybe half an hour of that. I did maybe 20 minutes of video live streaming, which can be resource intensive.
hmm
And after all that, when I got home, the phone was still at like 33%.
Yeah, that's what it says here. 33% when you got home, and you say you feel like it's good for video and photo work if better gear is not around.
Yeah, if you don't have the higher pro level gear for broadcast, capturing video, ENG, documentary type work, and all you have is your iPhone. And I mean, I have better gear, but just taking it to an event like this is it's extra work. So,
Right, right.
but iPhone, when they do the live stream, I think they're using 720p,
Mhm.
uh, but the actual video I shot on 4K. So from my iCloud or directly from the phone, later I can get the 4K video, and then I can create promo videos and documentaries using that.
Nice. Yeah, I mean that's what I find is like having the smartphone. In my case, it's the Google Pixel 5 that I'm still using. I find that having that with me, it's great to be able to shoot like kind of an impromptu interview or kind of any kind of behind the scenes, or if you're doing a Q&A at a festival and you want to grab some video or photos of that. I find like having that camera in your pocket with you at all times. It really is helpful, and it allows you to get a lot of things that you may not have even anticipated that would present themselves, but you can capture it and use it for promotional purposes later. Um, I'm curious, having used the iPhone 14 Plus this past weekend, and with your other experiments with it, do you feel what do you think of the idea of using it to shoot a feature film?
Uh, the video quality on these cameras are still not. Uh, Amanda, one sec. Amanda, interview's on. Quiet, please. Thank you. Okay. So using these phone cameras, um, not as good as something like the 1 inch sensor Canon XA50 that
Mhm.
I use, the camcorder that I use for my regular shoots. Because and the quality may never get there unless they invent some amazing processing tech that makes up for the really tiny lenses. I mean, the lenses on an iPhone are like the size of a dime, right?
Mhm.
And the on the XA50, it's like the lens is like 20, 30 times that size in diameter. And then the entire camera is pretty much one gigantic lens with a sensor and other gear around it, right? So tech wise, it's just a different level of tech.
Yeah.
And the sensor on the camcorder is much bigger. It's like, you know, different scales. The sensor on the phone is tiny compared to a 1 inch sensor on a camcorder. So the image quality is going to be, and the processing on the camcorders made for video. It's not going to overheat. So for filming all day, filming serious movies, serious film projects, um, the camcorder is best.
Mhm.
And but the iPhone, if you have nothing else, and one of the any other recent phones, if you have nothing else, you can use those phones, and you can just plan carefully to work around the limitations of the phones. So yeah, you could shoot a movie on an iPhone,
Yeah.
and many have done it, but the quality of the image and the ease of making a movie is going to be 10 times easier and better on a camcorder,
Yeah. I found
even
this.
like a tiny $200 camcorder.
Right. Yeah, I found this a couple of years ago when I started shooting on the DSLR that I really appreciated what the lenses bring to the project. I really it gave me, working with those different lenses, it really gave me a new, I think, a new level of appreciation for just what they bring to a project. And I'd been using the Google Pixel for like the first couple of recent feature film projects that I made, and it worked well in the way I was shooting them, and there were a lot of things I think I was able to do kind of all on the spur of the
Quick
moment.
question.
Sure, yeah.
The Forbidden Frames, what was the shot on?
That was a DSLR, Canon Rebel T7. Yeah,
Nice, that looked good.
yeah. I that was the first one I shot entirely with that, and
Nice.
I agree with your assessment. I mean, I'm a big advocate of people using, like, if you're especially if you're just starting out, like,
Mhm.
to use whatever camera you've got. So like this is in no way meant to discourage anybody listening to this who only has a smartphone and wants to make a movie. I say absolutely go for it. But I think for those of us who have maybe been doing this a while and have the option, the luxury of having different cameras at our disposal to choose from, I agree with your assessment of even though we're talking about two different smartphone cameras here. I think the basic limitations that you're describing in terms of the lenses are consistent across them,
Mhm.
and it is something I find myself really missing when I'm working with the Google Pixel. I miss the ability to have the kind of control over focus, the depth that you get with the lenses, and of course it is simpler at one level because it is more like point and shoot, whereas the DSLR, and I imagine like with the camcorders you're working on, there's uh, a lot more to set up. But
Yeah,
I
no, I prefer camcorders over even DSLRs just because ENG type, news gathering type, documentary type camcorders are built to work with one operator all day long if need be. So no switching lenses. The battery is really good. So prosumer or higher pro level camcorders, you can get them used for around 1,000 or new around 2,000, 3,000.
yeah
Get
you
one of
mentioned.
those cameras if you're a filmmaker, learn the camera really well. But even just out of the box, the image quality, sound quality, ease of using them all day long is going to be so much better. Because I'm doing so many things during a filming day, I want the gear to be like 200% reliable,
Mhm.
and to know that once I frame a shot and start recording, like 100% of the time, nearly 100% of the time, it's going to work. And with these prosumer and higher pro cameras, those are built for that.
Yeah.
while the DSLRs are really, you know, still cameras that shoot video, and they've adapted them to shoot video. So I don't like shooting on DSLRs, but Sony and other people are creating the video cameras that have the DSLR form factor. But I still prefer the camcorder form factor. The size makes it easy to work with all day
Mhm.
long.
Yeah, battery life is a big concern for me because although the phone holds up very well, there is just this one problem, which is if the battery dies, you then have to recharge and wait for it to recharge. Whereas with the like in my case, a DSLR, imagine with a camcorder, you can have multiple batteries charged and ready to go, and you just swap them out and then throw the other one on the charger. Well, that's why you're filming with that. So yeah, there's a
Or if
certain.
you're indoors, you can power it from the wall and shoot.
Mhm. Yeah, and also I find that with nighttime photography, I
Oh yeah,
am much more pleased. That's actually where I have found the smartphone cameras to maybe be at their weakest is in nighttime photography because there's a certain they seem to have
they
difficulty
can't
with
process
light.
nighttime really well.
Yeah, and for example, I was thinking of like some of the shots I love in your films of like the New York skyline at night and everything. And I was thinking, that you capture all the depth of that image, I think, really well using the camcorders, whereas a smartphone, I think, again, it comes down to like the lenses, maybe the processing. It tends to, for me, it tends to flatten that image a bit. It loses some of the depth somehow. It's hard for me to explain it, but it is there. It's in the nighttime footage is where I see the difference. I
Yeah,
will
yeah.
say,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, there's a problem. The iPhone 14 Plus, I did some nighttime tests. The When I look at the nighttime sky, the image was falling apart.
Hmm.
You could see like layers of processing that is visible. Whereas if it's on the XA50 camcorder, smooth, amazing
Hmm.
image. It's the lenses, the light gathering capabilities, and the larger sensor and the processing on the camcorders. Camcorders are built to do only one thing, which is capture amazing video and sound secondarily. Whereas the phone has to worry about 50,000 other things and capture video.
Yeah, yeah. And I was going to say, as a little contrast to that, when I filmed my short film Up and Down, we were out in broad daylight and everything. I think it handled that much better. I mean, that
Oh,
image,
that looked good, yeah.
yeah, seeing that on like a big screen. I mean, I was like, yeah, this. In fact, the first screening I went to with that was at the Cecil County Independent Film Festival at the Milburn Stone Theater, and they had a really nice big screen there. I mean, that was a really full, kind of you know, full state of the art kind of theater. And I think, and that was seeing it on that screen, I thought the image really held its own. I don't think it, needed any apologies made for it. But again, that was in broad daylight conditions. And I think it is, yeah, as we are saying, nighttime is when the smartphone cameras tend to struggle more. So yeah, it's one of the reasons why it's good to shoot these tests and figure out what's right for your project.
Mhm.
But like I said, I feel like I have to, kind of issue this, caveat that I don't mean to discourage anybody who only has access to a smartphone and wants to make a movie. Please go out, do it, and if you decide that you need another camera later on down the road to do what you want to do it better, or whatever, that's one thing. But yeah, like go out and make your movie. But these are just good things to be aware of as you move along with it. That you're going to maybe run into these limitations, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, if you have nothing better, use your phone.
Yeah,
And but if you're super serious about making movies, you'll find ways to get access to better gear.
yeah. It's funny because the Rebel T7 is apparently kind of a beginner's model for the DSLR, according to what I've read. And I bought it because I was looking. I didn't have a lot of money to spend on it, but I remember it was about 2 years ago, and I was looking into. I wanted to look into some different options, and I saw that I believe it was actually at Target that I bought it. They were selling it as part of a kit. It was a filmmaking DSLR filmmaking kit, so it came with a number of accessories. I think an extra lens. forget what else was included in this kit, but I think there were different accessories that don't come with, if you just buy the camera itself.
Mhm.
And for that price point, it was really incentivized me to buy it. And then I think one of the first things that I shot with it was a short experimental film called The Man Who Stopped and Stared at the Clouds. And there was a day that they were calling for particularly striking cloud cover that was going to be moving across the sky. It was going to be very, you know, otherwise very clear weather, but the cloud cover was going to be, very, very rich. And so I took it out and I used the extreme telephoto lens to be able to film, these very, very tight telephoto shots of the clouds, moving across the lens. And that was something that's, again, something I wouldn't have been able to do on the smartphone
Mhm.
without having those lens options. So,
And as a
yeah.
as a backup camera, this smartphones are good,
Hmm.
and as devices for organizing the shoot day and documenting the shoot day, the smartphones are good.
For
So I,
sure.
try to get the best possible smartphone you can, and use it that way, especially for doing live streams. As I was, yeah, Saturday was a good test for the new 14 plus, and it worked really well. But yeah, but as a second camera, it could work. As a primary camera, there's better options. You can buy a used like an XA15 even for like maybe $600 or so from Adorama, if you can find deals. Any of the Canon XA cameras, if they're in good condition with like usually from Adorama, you get like a 30-day or like a 90-day warranty that you can extend for a
Mhm.
30 days, something like that. And or B&H. So you can look for these pro cameras used and you can buy them at a good price. The one I'm using for the current movies, I bought used. New, it would have been close to 3,000, but I bought it used for like close to 1,400 or so.
Good, good. Yeah, I mean, there's so many places you can look out there and find good deals on these things, and find cameras that you can make work for you. Suji, well, one of the things I want to talk with you, not tonight, but when we next talk, I want to get into your film, the Secret Society for Slow Romance.
Awesome. Shout
And
out and what was it? It was not an NX80. Um, some other Sony anyway. I forget. I'm
yeah,
having trouble with the names today, so I'll have to look it up.
yeah. Well, when we discuss that film, I'd love to hear about some of the shots that you were getting around the city and things like that, because I think
Awesome.
it's
It was the cheaper model of the NX80
okay.
Sony. Yeah.
It's interesting. I was reading a book recently that I had found a copy of called Personal Filmmaking by James Piper. It was written back in this early 70s, I believe. And he talks about I mean, it goes into extensive detail about the technology of like Super 8 cameras and everything. One of the things I found interesting is that even though the technology itself that he writes about is basically obsolete, the ideas about how to use it are still
Mhm.
very relevant. And that's something where I think like a Super 8, if you think back to the days of like a Super 8 consumer, uh, you know, home movie camera, in a way, it's kind of the equivalent of the smartphone in the sense that that many people have them. I think certainly more people have smartphones than even had 8 millimeter home movie cameras. But the point is that it's something that's always with you, and you can start to think in terms of how to use it to tell a story. And if you're a beginning filmmaker and thinking about simple stories that you can shoot with it and how to cut that together, that book, Personal Filmmaking, is kind of an interesting glimpse into the technology of 40, 50 years ago. And even though the technology itself has changed, the application of it is still very relevant. So I find that book really, really interesting to think about.
Awesome. It's 9 o'clock, so let's wrap up.
All right. Well, I think we've probably covered most of what we were going to get to here tonight with your screening. It sounds like everything
Awesome.
went well, and I want to get, if you have more plans for screenings, let's come back on here and
Cool.
promote them and talk about them. And
And we have to talk about your two movies
oh
and
yeah,
Slow Romance and Renee. What did we talk about last time? Werewolf. Yeah.
fair enough. Yeah.
Hey, the memory's working. Good job.
All right.
So So yeah, we'll do in a week or so. We'll talk about some of these movies.
That all sounds good. Before we sign off, is there any last things you'd like to mention? Anything last things you'd like to promote?
Um, Check out my YouTube. Leave comments. Lots of comments on Cosmic Disco Detective Renee. It needs more comments. And one thing for filmmakers, with the community tab on YouTube, that functions, they've set it up so that it works like Twitter or Facebook. You can do everything you can do on Twitter pretty much on the community tab on YouTube. So we should start using it more, tagging people, sharing stuff, text, a lot of text based, sharing videos, images, communication can happen there as a backup to Twitter and Facebook, and that might work really well for filmmakers.
Sounds good. One last thing I want to give a plug to for you is anybody watching to this channel, Low Budget Visions, check out Sujewa's channel for Wednesday night indie film news.
That's right,
Lots of
tomorrow night.
interesting updates there from the world of Twitter, updates that people are sharing. Sujewa does a nice job of kind of bringing that all together, giving a nice summary of what's going on out there, what people are talking about, and yeah, highly recommend.
And I'll have a documentary about the 20th, the stuff from Saturday coming out, hopefully tomorrow. Back to you.
Great. Well, I think that covers it. And Sujewa, thanks again for speaking with me. It's always a pleasure. And I
Awesome.
will look forward to talking to you soon about Secret Society for Slow Romance.
Awesome. Keep making movies, people.